Shadaim, peace and freedom. I'm Queen Mother Imakhu, your renegade wise woman, and I'm here today with a review of the movie The Gods of Egypt. I originally was going to boycott the movie. That had been my plan over the last 2 years from when I first heard about the film, because I heard about the casting and how the casting did not reflect Kemet. But it also dawned on me that as a double Ankh carrying high priestess and Queen Mother in the tradition and WASP staff carrier, that I, as a spiritual leader, do have an obligation to address the concerns about the movie, and also that I should be well versed in what happened in the movie so I could speak about it, address any misperceptions, misconceptions, and just basic untruths that came across. Because, see, first and foremost is this. Many people tend to think that when it comes to ancient Khametic traditions, that it is nothing more than mythology. As a storyteller, as a professional storyteller, that I can tell you that mythology, mythos, the story, is all important when it comes to anybody's tradition, because the stories tell you what people think. It tells you about the ethics that they walk by, that they strive to live by. It tells you what how people lived, depending on the time era that is depicted, their beliefs. The story tells so very much. And certainly, as stories go from place to place to place, as people come into various areas and then travel and are fascinated by the tales that they hear in their travels, then certainly they pass on these stories, but they make them germane to what is relevant to them and where they live or where they have moved to, and so on and so on and so on, which is why there are Cinderella stories for every single culture, which is why we have so many stories that have the same thread that runs throughout it, but vary based on where and when it happens. Truth speaks to people, and also the imagination that we hang our hopes on so often when we're living in times where we feel hopeless or helpless. Stories give us hope, and they also dictate to us, or even imply to us, a better way that we can be, and they remind us of the best of who we were. They also remind us of the worst of who we as humans can be. But overall, respecting the story and the origin of the story is highly important. There was a conversation that took place in the elevator on the way down from the movie theater that I went to see the movie at, and I feel so bad that I asked my date to take me there. Ramona, I'm so sorry. I feel like you threw your money away. But there was a conversation that took place in the elevator, and we were asked about our opinions on the movie. The elevator operator, upon hearing our displeasure with the movie, said, well, it's a story, it's in public domain, And so I said, true, but for some of us, this is a spiritual practice. And he said, oh, that's true. This movie distorted the stories associated with the Necheru, who are the guardians, who are the facets of Nitshur. Nitshur refers to what some would commonly term as God, but refers to the life force energy. As you see this circle behind me, and you would imagine that the life force that we all sprang from is this big cosmic circle, and that these facets within the cosmic circle represent the Necheru, and that the energy of the Necheru rests within all of us. Well, resides within all of us, not so much rest. That they're active parts of all of us. And so these faith stories are extremely important to those of us who are modern day practitioners of Khametic spirituality. The original name of Egypt was Tamera, the beloved land, and also Kham and Kemet, which refers to the black people who lived there. Some people say it referred to the black silt that came up from the Hapi during the flood. Well, it's not necessarily so. And the Kememu, the black people who lived there, referred to themselves as black. Egypt was a term that came along much later, and it was from the Greeks. The Greeks who really strove in many ways to be like the Kemites. They wanted to be like them. They sent the best of their priesthood to study with the best of the Khametic priesthood. And the Khametic priesthood turned the Greeks away 3 times because they were not up to the same level that the Kemites were up to. But all of the lingo that was used in the film were the Greek names. Horus instead of Heru, Osiris instead of Wasir or Asar, Isis instead of Aset or Aset or Asit, and so on. And that right there said a great deal. Because for those of us who are modern day practitioners, we understand that there is power in using the original names and, giving homage to our ancestors and understanding the power of the language means that we should use the correct terminology. But I must say this. A lot of what was depicted also shows many of the misconstrued understandings of the stories that were associated with the Necheru, or gods and goddesses, for lack of a better term, of Egypt, or Kemet. And let me go to my notes. Made a few notes. Okay, so where were the black folks? The few black folks that were depicted were like servants, slaves, all right? And all the rest of Egypt was shown to be populated by not black folks, okay? Not even brown folks. And so it's interesting how a lot of times that kind of a thing can be done when you want to avoid dealing with other people. With the advent of the internet, we have done a lot to educate many folks who were hanging on to the notion that ancient Egypt was not populated by black folks. And so let's give credit where credit is due, all right? You would not have someone black playing George Washington, okay? And even though some people would scoff at the notion of these ever being living people, there's still principles. And also regarding the story, when people create images of the deities that are significant to them and germane to where they live, they generally create them to look like them, okay? The notion that God is within us and also that we are of God, and so therefore we make the images of the gods and goddesses mirror, if you will, to reflect us. So anyway, that's one major thing. Let's see. And okay, now Ra. Really, in our tradition, we refer to him as Re, as most often he is referred to. Re represents the life force. And in the movie, yes, he was correctly depicted, if you will, as this old man up on this cosmic barge Okay, but we're gonna do a Maury Povich here. He was not the father of Wasir or Osiris and of Set, originally called Setech or Setesh. No, the original father was Geb, who represents Earth, and they were produced through Nut and Geb. Nut was betrothed to Re and was not in love with Re and was in love with Geb and angered Re because she ended up getting with Geb instead of with him. And there's a whole story with how Re cursed her and all this. You know, you can check out the mythology, if you will, the story yourself associated with that. But Re is not the father. Okay? Let's see what else. And, oh, there was one major character who was black, and that's Jehuti. Jehuti is depicted as this vain, self-absorbed, untrusting person or individual or god, if you will. And that's not really true. But I'll tell you, there is something that they did get right, because there were many things that they evidently did some study, all right, when they created this film. Let me just check my time here. Oh, we're good. Okay. They kind of look down here to take a look. So they had Jehuti living in the still waters where there were these grand trees, and ultimately he lived in a tree. That's because Jehuti, or Thoth as they call him, and in truth it's supposed to be Tahut. The Thot is Tahut, all right, and which is Jehuti, all right. But Thoth lived in a tree, and that's because the priesthood of Jehuti was posited close to the temple of the priesthood of Seshat. And Seshat, which is a female principle of wisdom, of higher intelligence, of planning, schematics, libraries, everything that there is that is technical and occult and mystery is Seshat. And it is recorded that the priesthood of Jehuti studied with the priesthood of Seshat, and all of the information that was learned there came from the divine feminine. Seshat represents the tree of life. So his living within a tree, being nourished within the tree, finding harbor safety within the tree is consistent. But it's interesting how many of the aspects of the females were not mentioned, including Seshat. Like the principle of Ma'at. Now, the halls of judgment were shown, the 42 assessors were shown, the scales of justice were shown, but there was not any mention of Ma'at at all, which is consistent with the depiction of the females in the movie too. Because if they weren't mentioned, then it was that on screen they were weak, vain, shallow, cowardly. Hathor, who they call Hathor, Hater, okay, or Huteru, the deity of higher love, is depicted as a self-absorbed, self-serving coward who only rises to the occasion in terms of self-sacrifice when she's absolutely pressed to. Now, it's also made to seem like she escaped from being in Amenta or the other realm, but in truth, she, along with Enpu, or Anubis, as the Greeks called him, were the guardians who helped to, or are considered the guardians who help those who transition in the afterlife. And to make it seem as though she escaped to be on the earth plane is wrong. Also, to make it seem as though that she would just do anything to just save herself is wrong. In truth, her energy represents higher consciousness and sacrifice for the greater good at all times, and selflessness, and also coming in many guises, whether beggar, whether disfigured, no matter what, because she tests you on what is in your heart and the beauty that you have in your heart or lack thereof. She is that divine reflection of what is in your heart. So let's get that straight. In addition to that, the whole thing with her flipping, the flicking the tongue, and it was a serpent tongue. Their use of the negative portrayal of women as serpents, and also riding the serpents in service to Satesh, or Set, after he takes over Kemet, is another way of pulling down the strength of women, and also the ability for women to think for themselves, and the whole thing about the stereotype of the serpent or the snake being some evil image, when in truth the serpent is connected to the sacred matriarchal women's mysteries and is a symbol of wisdom and higher consciousness as well. Let's go back to the beginning of the movie. And I just also want to say, for the record, and here is where we go talking about mythology and how stories will carry on. The truth is that Heru existed in mythos long before the mythology of Asar or Osiris and his siblings came along. Well, more particularly before the mythos surrounding Isis or Aset came along, because Heru, Horus, was originally depicted as part of the triad with Khametic, who is an ancient water guardian believed to be the oldest water Nechurt, or goddess, that came out of Kemet, the oldest one known to wear a fish crown, predating Yemoja. And she had a very, very strong cult following. And then later, an aspect of Wasir, Banebjedet, came to the fore. And so in order for him to be considered popular, he was partnered with Banebjedet. And then their child was Heru, or Horus, okay? So he was considered to be an aspect of Wasir. When the cult of Wasir became, or Asar, became very popular, then the priesthood that was in power, and also the royalty, the Nesut, the king, or even the Nesu, rather, who's the king, or the Nesut, the queen, politically would change some of the mythology so that people would be more accepting of this particular deity. And so this is the earliest, and this goes back to pre-dynastic times, the earliest existence of Asar, Osiris, and also of Heru, the son. And the mother was not Isis or Ast, it was Khametic. The characteristics of Khametic were later attributed to Isis or Ast in order to have her be accepted as well. And then Khametic became a more obscure deity. Okay, so let's just get that straight, first of all. Now, to take it further, the battle that took place in the movie between Osiris, Wasir, Asar, and Set or Setuk, Setesh, happens nowhere in mythology. Now, Set does battle a brother that's not spoken of much, and who is Heru the Elder. He is the fifth child of Nut and Geb. You have Asar, you have Set, you have Nebuchadnezzar, you have Ast or Isis. Nebuchadnezzar is Nephthys, okay, Neptit, okay. Anyway, and then you have Heru the Elder. Originally, Heru the Elder, and this is not the one who became the nephew, okay, or the son of Isis and Osiris. This is their brother. He originally was the guardian of the desert. And Setesh, according to mythology, was the original guardian of the waters. Heru the Elder did not want to be the lord of the desert anymore, according to mythology, and battled his brother Setesh for control of the waters. And Setesh lost, which is how, in mythology, he became the lord of the desert. It was not originally attributed to him, all right? And also to understand the character, if you will, that was depicted in the movie was just this pure evil. This is where, with this concept or misperception of the energy of Setesh, this actually played into the later general understanding or misunderstanding of or creation of Satan, Setian, okay. And in truth, if you really know the full story, and I advise you to look up the full story, you find out that really he was really misunderstood and he got a bad rap. If you understood what happened in the story, then you'd be ticked off too, okay? They skipped over the whole thing about Osiris sleeping with the wife of Set and Set finding out. They skipped the whole thing with the party that, and Asar being hacked and thrown into a coffin and then hacked into 14 pieces and, later, and then his being resurrected twice with Ast, Isis, and also Nebuchadnezzar. They had, in the movie, Nebuchadnezzar with the wings that are attributed to Isis or Ast. She is known for her resurrection breath and her wings. But they had to attribute it to somebody, because in the movie, they killed off Isis, saying that she killed herself, which completely counters what her principle stands for, which is, yes, undying love and loyalty, but not loyal to the point where she would kill herself and leave her son. Her son, Heru, became the great warrior that he was because of his mother. Again, cutting down the woman. To go into further detail, let's see here. I've mentioned just about everything in the notes here. Oh, okay. So, the threads of truth that were shown or implied according to the mythology, the whole thing about how the gods would bleed gold, all right? Yeah, the idea that they were supposed to have golden skin and so forth, but on a deeper level, it refers to them being ascended masters. That's where the whole concept came from, because gold is Nub, which is like Neb. Nub and Neb refer to refinement, gold, mastery. And so, that was interesting to see them actually bleeding some gold. Okay, all right. It was, it was interesting. But and then also what they did get right was how when Heru became awakened, or Horus, for those of you who again are just following with the Greek names, that it was as an act of self-sacrifice when he came to realize, well, actually this other character, which I'm going to get to, reminded him, this is not about you, that this is about the people of ancient Egypt. This is about so much more. Yeah, you're justified in being angry, but and this is not actually in the mythology. This is where I'm sure the filmmakers did research, because for those of us who are modern day faith practitioners, this is what we teach. This is what we gleaned from the mythology, because it's not stated in the mythology that he sacrificed himself and then also became awakened. And by the way, it was in battles back and forth that eventually his one eye was gouged out. He was not blinded in both eyes. It represents his being spiritually blind and his not knowing or understanding that his anger should have been a righteous anger, yes, but not one that was a selfish anger where he just wanted vindication. There was never any coronation. There was never any... Listen, according to mythology, Osiris or Asar was dead when his son was born. Okay, the whole thing with the Immaculate Conception goes back to Isis or Ast. Completely skipped over. All right. So just from the door, the notion that this coronation was going to take place and that Asar was going to pass on his crown to his son doesn't exist anywhere in any of the mythos of ancient Kemet. No. The filmmakers took great liberties. And, the thing is, this is akin to the notion that, okay, so for people who are followers of the Buddha, all right, so what if they completely changed any of the mythos regarding Siddhartha? Okay, if they changed the mythos, the stories related to Jesus, for people who are Christian followers. Now, I'll say this. There was a boycott that was decided a couple of years ago. Yes, we can boycott. It's wonderful when we're able to make our economic power felt when we are displeased with something. We need to carry that on with other things, my people. But this is why I also felt bad with going to the movie, because I was very firm I was not going. I really wish now that I had waited so I could see somebody's bootleg. I don't even support bootleg. Y'all can bootleg this all you want. I don't care. But anyway, but I digress. Let me get back to my notes. No, let me finish my point. And I'm not even going to go into detail about how, just as a film in and of itself, it was a horrible film. I mean, it was cheesy. It was really poorly written and poorly acted. There was nothing that was redeeming about it in that way that would make me want to recommend for somebody else to go and see it, even if I were not Khametic. Okay, just for somebody off the street. I can't see people going, hey, go see that. People in the theater did not seem thrilled. They seemed rather underwhelmed, to be honest with you. So, but the fact is that this movie was doomed to fail, not only because of the casting. And I do want to mention also that Thoth Jehuti had his brain ripped out by Set, and Set had Tehuti's brain put in his head. So here's this white dude ripping the throbbing brain out of the wise man who was black. How strong of a metaphor is that? How in your face is that? I took your mind. Yes. Black folks, wake up. All right. There were other things as well that just were so in your face. Aside from the very fact that, all these non-black folks, all these white folks that were playing all these roles, all of this just flaunts the disrespect that is still shown to us as a people. It has taken us so long to reclaim our traditions. And now that we have all of this information regarding the truth of our history, I mean, you have to remember that when I was coming up, and it's only been within the last like 40 years um, that this wasn't the case. But when I was coming up, it was reinforced that people who lived in quote unquote Egypt never looked like this. And so more of us are traveling. There's the internet, there are these books written, and we have all these scholars. I'm proud to say that I'm one of them who have been retrieving the truth of the traditions. I did the research. I'm the one that did the research, and traced every single one of the Scandinavian runes back to ancient Kemet. Got death threats and all kinds of things. It was real cute. You can see there's a video that I have on that's here on my channel from when I made the announcement and I was doing a workshop. But anyway, as a scholar who has been committed to retrieving our traditions, including the truth behind the winter holiday traditions, I have a video about that too. Check that out. I broke down the movie Avatar. Check that out, and tracing everything back to Kemet. The African origins of the fairy tradition. I wrote an article for Fae magazine in the UK, and now it is being acknowledged that yes, it goes all the way back to, as I found the word Fae in the Kemetic language, the African origins of the word witch, okay, which came out of Kemetic language, Nile Valley languages. The term wajet, okay, wajet, wujat, all of this relates to the term meaning a powerful female who is a healer who can bend energy, which is the same as the word for Wicca or Ouija, okay, which originally is supposed to be pronounced Ouija, but yeah, going back to Kemet. And so all of this research that I do, and I just want to let you know, I'm a lover. Okay, I love people. I'm really interested in just dealing with people who have a big heart, who have the intention of healing the planet, and who are not out to hurt people. Who are looking to work together. And so that means that I have a wide birth of friends, diverse, and a very wide circle and a very tight-knit circle, and also a very loving and positive, affirming, supportive circle. So this is not about bashing people who don't look like me. This is about the truth, okay? This is not trying to be superlatives, this one's better than or so forth, but that is the message that comes across from this movie, because truth is truth. And so here we have a desecration of our traditions again. Now that we've got the knowledge of the fact that they did originate from people who look like us, now it's in your face like, well, guess what? We've got the money so we can make movies that look like whatever. Now, I know that there's a lot of non-traditional casting, which is very interesting. The whole thing with what happened with, I didn't see the movie with Idris Elba, Alba, Thor. I didn't see it. I thought that was very interesting, but I do have to see it because I, again, think it's important to be able to respect tradition. And while, yes, in Hollywood, there are not really enough roles for us as people of color, still the fact is that there are so many other things that can be produced, that we have our own stories to tell. And the whole idea of not appropriating goes across the board. I mean, listen, now they've announced that a white actor is going to play Michael Jackson. We've had, since the film industry has from the origins of the film industry, there have been stereotypical portrayals and casting with blackface, and also having people of color whether it's Black, whether it's Asian, whether it's Native American, whether it's Latino, being portrayed by white actors and in a stereotypical fashion. We're still doing that dance, and it's important for us to be able to be respectful of one another's cultures, but also to look at the truth. And so, going back to the film, which was opened during the same weekend or around the same time frame that they opened some movies regarding Jesus. The one where it's questioning what happened during the 3 days of his resurrection. I'm interested in seeing that. Okay. And then also another one depicting Jesus as a baby. Now, as it is in Christian culture, Christians are taught to hate the quote unquote Egyptians because of what happened in the Bible with the depictions. And yeah, there were some things that were monkeyed around with the Council of Nicaea. Yes. But in truth, when Kemet fell, it was a pretty dastardly place. The priesthood that tried to preserve the best of the traditions, the priest and the priesthood, priests and priestesses who had not been corrupted and who were trying to still hold on to the integrity, went down swinging, okay? Others left under a cloud because to be in Kemet at that time, or ancient Egypt, was almost certain death if you said that that's where you were from, because the fact that the place had become so foul. And by this time, that's when the Greeks had invaded. I mean, everybody just descended on it. And once there was a compromise of the ethics with the principles of Ma'at, once they were thrown out the window, then that was a certainty of the downfall. And so, listen, I'm not trying to sit here and try to paint some kind of idyllic picture, making it seem like everything was wonderful, okay? Because historically, everything was not. And there certainly is accountability. But for me, as a modern day faith practitioner, I am one who looks at the mistakes of our forebears and also looks at the best in how I practice the traditions. Because for me, it is a tradition of bridge building, of accountability, and of creating inner peace, and also peace and harmony with my environment, and respect to one another, and understanding and respecting the boundaries, but also seeing where it is good for us to be able to intersect. This film completely blows anything regarding the true tenets of our beliefs. It obliterates them, and it's painful, it's shameful, and again, it upholds why people have such a negative perception overall when you talk today about being a Khametic faith practitioner. And in truth, a lot of what I saw in the movie reminds me of the very sexist, patriarchal practice that people who are practicing Khametic traditions today are engaging in. Yes, I said it. The fact is that many of us who are women and who are desperately trying to get to the pre-dynastic purity of the matriarchal traditions that our ancestors handed us have had quite a way to go in terms of abuse from the men in the community, in terms of the lip service that they give regarding their love of the goddess and how they uphold the goddess, and all of that is just it's just bumping their gums. And so it's ironic that I saw the same energy and portrayals in this movie about then, when it is truth for today. In many ways, I am ashamed to even refer to myself as being Khametic. I refer to myself as being Shenuist, because Shenu is the harmonious circle, okay? And also, again, in talking about truth, the fact that the main part of the storyline regarding the strength of the women was completely cut down is I don't want to say this. Listen, there is a prophecy that is tied into the mythology of the resurrection story, the original resurrection story. Well, one of the original resurrection stories. I mean, the original salvation story goes all the way back to Sekhmet. You can see another one of my videos regarding that. But the most popular one that Christian themes and other spiritual cultures based their mythos from, that came out of the Wasirian resurrection, or the Osirian resurrection, if you will. But it was all held together through the females. The prophecy of rising again was only made possible because of the energy of the females. The awakening of Heru, only possible because of the strength of the females who guided him. Okay? And today, we have brothers who are trying to dictate to us what this tradition should be based on their own limited, sexist, non-spiritual perceptions. For those of us who are female and who are really digging in deep and allowing Ma'at to search our hearts and to bring harmony and balance, we are standing up and we're not taking it anymore. I know that I'm not. And in the same way that I'm telling you that that movie is not a representation of true Khametic spirituality, a lot of what you're seeing replicated out here today is also not true Khametic spirituality. There are a lot of sisters out here who are pimping themselves for a lot of brothers out here who are telling us how to be. Sisters, it's time to stand up. And for those who are claiming to be Khametic and are still doing their best to hold sisters down and telling us how to speak, how to dress, how we should practice, it's time for y'all to go sit down somewhere. In truth. Humble yourself to the divine, to Nichur, and learn the purity and the truth that comes in honoring the divine mother, and that is not based on fear of losing control. Because this is the thing. There are folks who are saying that matriarchy is based on European concepts of feminism. That is not matriarchy. And this is across the board, okay? In all cultures. The matriarchy sprang from the idea of balance. That's matriarchy. Many are fearing that it means that men are going to be squelched. In matriarchy, it means that there's an understanding that we walk together, side by side. Not with one up here and one following behind, okay? We work together in balance. That is Ma'at. And this is a call for those of you who claim to be modern-day faith practitioners of Khametic traditions. Let those principles get deep inside of you so that you're able to work past your fears, so that you're able to work past any of the anger that is holding you back. There is righteous anger, yes, but it should spur you into righteous change, okay? That also means that you're able to see the root of Ma'at is Ma'a, and that you're able to see the truth and the interconnectedness that we share, okay? So I just wanted to be clear on that as well. A few more things really quickly. Let me see where we are time-wise. We've got a few more minutes. Okay. It's interesting that the two mortal characters depicted in this, one was named Zaya, and in Khametic language, the word Zaya means to magnify or to make great. And you can see that that's what she did. So there the filmmakers did their homework, okay? Um, Also, the other main character that Zaya was in love with and who she enhanced was Beck, who was a common thief. Now, Heru, who was the hero, that's where the word hero comes from. Heru or Horus was not able to become great without the help of Beck. And I'm sitting there in the movie and I was like, well, that's very interesting, the choices that they made. Because Zaya, meaning to enhance or to make great, because Aya means great. When you put zu, the us sound in front of it, then it means to enhance, okay? So to enhance someone to greatness, that's what she did by suggesting that he be the one to go and rescue the Beko and rescue or retrieve rather the eye of Horus that had been the eyes of Horus that had been snatched out from Set. Um, but Beck, I thought, is interesting because Beck means the anointed one. Yeah. So here you have this anointed mortal who it seems at the end becomes exalted into becoming a god as well, or if nothing else, a priesthood member. Um, and he's this slimy guy. It's interesting because, well, let me just read my notes here. Okay, Bekhat means to be oily hearted or deceitful. In other words, a slimy person, and Beck was initially a slimy person. Beck also means hawk. Mm-hmm. Or a hawk of gold, which is how Heru in the movie or Horus was depicted. So here you have the human version that is sort of a representation of the mirror image of Horus or Heru. Um, Bak also means to bless, to be protected, protector of the dead. And ultimately, when Zaya, I'm not worried about any spoiler alerts. Okay, you waste your money if you want to go see this movie. But anyway, Beck becomes a protector of Zaya, who gets killed. All right, and so Bak means protector of the dead. Yeah, all of this is on point. So they did some homework. Okay, I don't know why they didn't use the language throughout the movie. I mean, they didn't use the Khametic language really anywhere. Um, but you have Beck and Heru, which is Baku, and the two of them together, they worked in concert. I mean, which represents the principle of it's called Menu, which is man man enhancing, no, God enhancing man and man enhancing God. It's two Heru flags that are depicted. Let me see if I can find it here in my cards real quick. But anyway, so I thought that was very interesting. But in our world, the principle of Heru is not one that needs rescuing, and they depicted Heru or Horus as some drunken, washed up, weak, bitter. Well, yeah, he was bitter, weak, bitter god. Okay, this is the principle of Menu or Min, and again, I did my homework when it comes to the runes. I'm sure y'all recognize this, right? The two nature flags together. Mm-hmm. Okay, so anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say on the film. And if you want to learn more about Kemetic culture, at least my practice, the way that I teach it, again, it's from a place of bridge building and peace, and of course incorporating the Kemetic yoga, which of course came from ancient Egypt too, ancient Kemet, according to my research. Ika, Yuka, Yuke, these are all the terms that are associated with it. Um, if you want to learn more about all of this and the truth behind the great legends, if you will, that go along with the traditions that they are moral lessons for us, and also lessons of hope and prophetic messages and so much more, then please visit my temple's website, Shorem Shenu Temple.info. The information will be down below in the YouTube description. If you want to visit my website to find out more, then you can go to queenmotherimakhu.info. The Queen Mother tradition started in ancient Nile Valley as well. It didn't start in Europe. Again, it's a matter of truth. It's not a matter of trying to be superlative or anything like that. It's just speaking truth. And so let's respect one another, and let's do what we can to not desecrate each other's traditions. Let's look inside. Let's see the commonalities that we share, but let's also come to understand the deeper elements of how mythos develops, the importance it has on our lives. Read Joseph Campbell's book. It's a good book regarding mythos. And also just the beauty of the chants and the language, and so much more, and it being relevant to us today. We don't follow any 8-foot gods or anything like that. We understand the energies to be energy principles, all right? And those principles of greatness and no limitations lie within you. Much love to you, and open your mind. Yeti, be at peace.